something that's near and dear to my heart. God has been leading, and probably going on 3 years now. If you were at the executive board the other night, you kind of heard my testimony about how God has been leading in this as God has led Danny Henderson up in Lamar Association begin to do work with multi-housing there in Lumberton. God began to speak to me, and I began to pray through it and began to go with Steve. And we've taken a very slow approach to this, just letting God open doors and do some things for us. I want to talk to you about multi-housing strategy. I want to give you some information that we've gleaned. Brother John has heard this before. He's been on some of the trainings. But this is probably one of the greatest untapped mission fields around. If we have time at the end, I'll show you some slides that I made just to kind of give you an idea about the number of multifamily housing, just the apartment communities that is recognized by MapQuest. And MapQuest doesn't recognize them all because I found some shortcomings in that. I also decided I'd try to do, since that was working so well for apartment complexes, I would do mobile home communities, and it didn't even scratch the surface of those, and because I knew of several that it left out to do this. This is some information that you can get from the apartment industry. Here, 57% of the United States lives in a multi-housing community. Now, we don't think about that down here because we're still basically a rural state, and even though most of us live right here on the Gulf Coast, which is more urbanized than the rest of Mississippi, the nation at large lives in multi-housing. And then one day, I probably think that there will be places in the United States that looks much like China, and Brother Danny can mention this, where there are blocks and blocks and blocks of 50-plus story buildings that is nothing but apartments, and people living in these apartments. And they're not big apartments, so there's tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people in these apartment complexes. You'll go to a town, and land-wise, it may not be very big, but the population will number somewhere between 7 and 9 million people in that town. There are high-density pockets of people. We count apartment complexes, communities, trailer parks, public housing, and condominiums in this. The industry has what they call the scale A, B, C, and D. The A is the ultra-fancy, nice, guard at the gate, gated communities, okay? Probably a lot of condominiums and things like that. That is that. The D would be your government subsidized housing project. If you're familiar with Pastor Christian, that would be Camille Village. If you've ever been on Highway 28, on 28th over here, just north of the CB base, if you go toward Long Beach, turn off a canal and go toward Long Beach, there is a public housing right there. Usually brick homes, duplexes, and these are subsidized. I could name you several apartment complexes and say that you've driven by and say, what do you think this is? And it's a very interesting thing to do because Brother John and I took one of these trips, and we'd go up and the guy would say, what do you think that apartment is? We'd all go, A. He goes, no, it's a B.
Maybe even a C.
Maybe even a C. Because you can't judge the apartment complex by what it looks like on the outside. And some of the apartment complexes that God has opened doors for us are gated communities. But they're government subsidized. They've been built by with private money. People are making money, some money off of this, I think. They look great outside, but the interior, when you get inside, is kind of Spartan, and in that case, and so, and as you move along, the way that you would reach someone in an A or a B is going to be totally different from the way that you would reach somebody who is in a C or a D. So if you took an opportunity to go by and look at an apartment complex and thought, okay, you know, that's a B, it's probably a C. And if you look at it and you say it's a C, it's probably a D. So we tend, those of us who are not there involved in these, tend to overestimate what this is. In an apartment community, 95% of the people are unchurched. Okay? Think about that. 95% of the people. If you think about Walmart, go in Walmart and count 10 people and realize that the first 9 of them, at least, if they were in an apartment complex, would not be in church anymore. Okay? And when we talk about the Gulf Coast being 80% unchurched, the majority of that falls within the apartment complexes that we have. Less than 5% are attached to any kind of evangelical church. This is what Richard Harris said. If we could impact multi-housing, we could change the landscape of lostness in North America. Think about that. If we could go in there and change the percentage of unreached people by 20%, how that would affect our entire Gulf Coast. People coming to know the Lord. People's lives being changed, and the ripple effect that would have. If we got that up to 80% as unchurched, what a great thing that it would be for us. We could change the landscape of lostness on the Gulf Coast if we did that. Multi-housing is an arena most Southern Baptists do not know how to get their arms around. Y'all are doing a little of it. They're doing a little bit of it in Lamar County. But by and large, in the state of Mississippi, there are not many people who are doing multi-housing ministry and trying to reach those people. We drive by there, we have some stereotypes that make us think about them differently. Here are the misconceptions. They don't want us there. We usually think that about the managers. And one reason that is that we go in there with the idea is that we're going to start a Bible study first dash out of the box. Or we're going to hold services. And that does cause the manager grief. But if you go in there and say, I want to help you help your people, what can we do? And ask them what needs to be done, they want you there. Because here's the thing. They're the managers. Their worthwhileness is determined by the occupancy, the number of problems that they have, and when the management company looks at their effectiveness, that's what they're looking for. They want to keep those places filled. And so if you come in and say, you know, what would you like for us to do? Well, we need an after-school kids tutoring program. You know what? Then they get to put that on their thing that when people come in, look, we have an after-school tutoring program. You'll want to come so your kids can be helped. It makes them look good. And if it makes them look good, it gives us an open door to be able to be there. So the managers really do want us there. It's the way that we approach them. I was talking to one of our pastors. He's of a different denomination that's going to help us with this. And I was talking to him on the phone. He says, "No, we're going to go in there and start a Bible study. We're going to go in there and start a Bible study." And I went and said, "Whoa, you know, you're not going in there to start a Bible study. You're going in there to ask that manager what you can do to help her folks. And it may take 18 months to 2 years. But this is what happened to Danny Henderson in Lumberton. They ministered for over 2 years in this community, in this apartment community. And so he's standing there one day as an event is going on, the manager's standing beside him, and he says, "You know, we've been doing this for a while." I said, "You know, we've done some different things. what's something else that we could do to help you and help your people? And she looked at him and goes, can you start a Bible study? The door was open. And the very reason that we wanted to get in there is now paved, with brand new asphalt, and the way is wide because she's the one that requested it. And then those are some of the situations where people get apartments to be able to hold these things there. So they want it. They're all transient. Okay? I always thought that. But you will find that the transient people are the young couples and the people who are just moving in town who can afford to live in the A's and the B's because they're waiting to go buy a home. They're there temporarily. They move here because of a job or some situation, and they go in there, they get settled in their jobs. That allows them a chance to begin to shop around for houses. And finding a house is not easy, is it, John? Okay. And so it gives them a chance. The lower you go, when you get into the C's and the D's, that once you get there, you just about can't get out. And so if you drive by places like Camille Village or some of these other public housing apartment communities, there are people who have been there for years. And they're not moving out. They're staying. And they wind up raising their families. Not only their children, but their grandchildren and their nieces and their nephews. They are not interested in God. They're as interested in God as anybody else. When we start going to them and instead of taking a Bible and slapping them upside the head and saying, you need to get saved, when we start saying, I'm Neon Williams and I'm from such and such a church, and God loves me and I love God and He loves you. Can I pray with you about something? And we begin to make those inroads and build those relationships. Those people are interested in God. And let's admit it, folks, God's the only way that some of them are going to get out of the situation that they're in. Because in many times we're looking at multi-generational things. Grandma and Grandpa were in public housing. Mom and Dad never got out of it. They are in public housing. The next generation is going to be in public housing. And so we've got to break that. And it'll take a lot of people to do it. It doesn't take a lot of people to do it. What we're asking for from our churches in working in the multi-housing communities, we're asking them to commit to 3 to 5 people 3 to 5 times a year for a 3 to 5 year commitment. Our problem is that too many times, like during the summer, when we got Partnership Gulf Coast, we'll run to an apartment complex, twist their arms so that we can do a backyard Bible club there, and then we leave. And we don't ever show back up until a year or two later when we want to do another backyard Bible club there. We want to make a commitment to these people. You can't build a relationship with them unless you're with them. Now, it's not the same 3 to 5 people, those 3 to 5 times a year. You can have 3 different people, 5 different people, but you never probably need more than 3 to 5 people at any time working in that situation. And that multi-housing ministry is a passing fad. How can you say it's a passing fad if 57% of the population lives in multi-housing? It's only going to get worse because statistics show that rural America is getting smaller in number because people are moving to the metropolitan areas. They're all very different. There's different cultures. And we don't find it here as much. There is a little bit of this from what I can tell. But in many places, like in Tuscaloosa or college towns, where you've got students that are coming into college, to go to college, the people from Nigeria tend to stay in the same apartment complex. Or the people from this country tend to stay in apartment complexes, and the cultures are different. We've even discovered that within the Hispanic culture, yes, they all speak Spanish, but the culture from each country is different, and some countries don't get along with each other. You don't really want to have a worship service where Mexicans and Puerto Ricans are meeting in the same place because they dislike each other. There is a bias that is there, just like we find in white culture. They're very, very vulnerable in our culture because they don't know our culture. Jerry Rankin says that the multi-housing culture is like a waffle. On a pancake, we can pour the syrup, and what's the syrup do? It runs off down the sides. But you pour syrup, and each one of those little squares is a different culture. And you have to minister to them in a different way. There is no cookie cutter as far as multi-housing strategy is concerned. Tilly Bergen says, if they won't come to church, then we'll take church to them. I'll be glad to send any of you our Gulf Coast Baptist Association multi-housing strategy. And on our strategy, it says that we want to have an abiding Christian presence in every multi-housing community. Now that may mean a Bible study. It may mean that there may be a church there. We don't know what kind of form that it may take, but we are called to go. That's one of the things I have a hard time getting our local churches to see. God never said for us to sit up in our four-column churches or red brick churches and say, all right, we've got it. Come get it. We're not Mississippi Power. We're not Coast Electric. You know, if you want electricity on the Gulf Coast in Harrison County, you got to go to one of those things. They're the ones that have the electricity. And so we're kind of like Mississippi Power in our churches sometimes. We got God over here, and we got the answers. If you want them, you have to come get them. But Jesus told us you've got to go to those people. And so I'm excited about any possibilities that we can get into these multi-housing strategies, multi-housing communities. That's easy for everybody else to say. And so we're going to take church to them so we can, in whatever form it takes, God is going to bless them. Strategy for multi-housing ministry. There are three ways. Intentional. A local church purposefully goes into the community to work. That's what Fernwood and Hansborough are doing at Baywood over on Switzer. That's what the Bridge Church is going to do in Timber Grove. And if you were here the other night at the executive board, as they have begun to study life on mission there at the Bridge, God has laid on their heart 4 more multi-housing communities for them to minister to. I asked them for 1. They have discovered 4 more that they feel like God is doing. Where you go in there and say, what can we do to help you minister to these people? Then you've got in Kearney, where you would move into an apartment complex. For example, I'll just take Brother John and Miss Liz. If they had, instead of getting on base housing, had found an apartment complex where they could have moved in, that would have been an incarnational ministry there, because I know Brother John, and I know Brother Liz, and I know Sister Liz. I know how that is. They would be there telling people about Jesus. They would be trying to start some kind of ongoing, abiding Christian presence in that community. That's incarnational. Someone moving in there and getting ministry there. Because once you're on the inside, there's not a whole lot that the manager can tell you not to do, because if you want to have a Bible study at your house, that's your business. You know, that's your business. So you don't even get in trouble for soliciting, because you walk by, you see somebody and say, look, we're going to have a Bible study over at apartment 134. You know, Thursday night at 6 o'clock. want you to come. That's not solicitation. It's two people in the apartment community talking to each other. And then there is indigenous, where inside an apartment community or a mobile home community, we work with on-site leaders, people who, what we call persons of peace. Are a gatekeeper in every one of those, especially in those where there's not a lot of mobility out of it. There's somebody there that runs that place. They're not the manager, but they're the unofficial sheriff, so to speak, that arbitrates disputes. And they're the one person that can walk outside and look at a bunch of kids and say, y'all need to get back into the apartment, or get back there. Y'all stop that. And it stops immediately because they're that person. And when we can get them involved in church and begin to get them involved in doing something in that community, it's called indigenous. And that's what we really strive to do is we don't want to have to always do it for them. We want them to begin to take that mantle up and do it themselves. Missional community, more than a Bible study, but less than a church. I don't necessarily agree totally with that, and with this idea. If you've got 15 or 20 coming to a Bible study, I can name you 2 or 3 churches in this association that don't run 15 or 20 on Sunday morning. So they can be a church as far as I'm concerned. And there's a lot of talk about house churches. I have no problem with that. Wherever we can get people together to worship God. That doesn't have to be in a red brick church or steel building, anything like that. Christians who have hooked their wagons together to make a difference. They meet on site, they have sponsoring churches, and they only receive initial outreach funding before it begins to come. They begin to do their own thing there. How do we develop the missional community on site? The people strategy. We pray fervently. Guys, we need to be praying all the time. We need to be praying that God will open doors wherever, not just in the multi-housing industry, but wherever we can minister to people. That God would give us the eyes to see the lostness out there, to see the people groups within our own county, within our own community. But we need to be praying for that. But we also need to be praying for God to open doors for the right people to be able to come and to move in to do this ministry. Tonight at 5:30, I'm going to be meeting with John and Liz and another young man. I just received an email from one of the young ladies that I invited, and she doesn't feel like God is leading her at this time to do this. But we're going to try to find multi-housing strategists that will go in and begin to work there. Neil Hughes says we need to do a Jericho walk. Okay? How many times did the children of Israel walk around Jericho? Yes, 13 times. Most people get that wrong, but they 13 times prayer walking around that. Our problem is, and I'm guilty of it too, we have this area and we prayer walk it one time. When we prayer walk that, no, we have to bring the walls that Satan has built around some of our communities down, and we do a prayer walk around those. We engage the people. That's just going in there and just say, can I pray for you? I wish Danny Henderson was here to tell you some of the stories where he's gone to a door, just knocked on the door, and he said, I'm Danny Henderson. I love God, God loves me, and God loves you, and I love you. Is there anything I can pray with you about? And people break into tears because they were about to commit suicide. They were on a low ebb and they needed an answer. They needed somebody to be a friend, and God brought them to them right then and there. We engage the people, then we understand what they need. Because we can go in and look at it with our middle class self and look and say, well, they need this and they need that, and totally miss it because that's not what they really need. And so we want to be able to talk to them and build those relationships. That's when we will have the opportunity to tell them about Jesus Christ. You engage them through block parties, through community events, through need-based outreach. All of that is discussed in our strategy. Our strategy is about this thick. It's a booklet. Some of it is redundant because I brought it from several folks. But it mentions ideas of how you can do these block parties and community-based events and need-based outreach. And if you're involved in Partnership Gulf Coast, if you want Partnership Gulf Coast to be involved with you in a situation, Danny and them have a ministry ongoing to the apartment complex behind you. Well, last year, we brought in a group that did Backyard Bible Club as a part of your ministry. Now, they just didn't do it go away. They have continued to have ministry there. But we have the resources to be able to do this. O is we open the Word. What's going to change people's lives? The Word of God. They can find the answer to all their needs in the Word of God. And I could go on about that. That's just, building the intentional relationships, being able to share the gospel. Tilly Burton says, hang out and hover around. Again, building those relationships. When people say, well, I've got this problem, I've had this problem. And we can say, the Bible speaks to that. And we can show them what the Bible says. And as they grow in the Lord, then they'll understand that when you say the Bible speaks to that, then they're going to incorporate that into their lives. Prepare key leaders, not just in your church, but in that community. Because you're going to want to have indigenous leaders there. You're not going to be there every week to knock on doors and invite people. It's going to be the people in the communities that are going to be the ones that invite folks. 3 to 5 people usually, and you want to go through Life on Mission. I meant to bring one of those, but I didn't. Then launch a ministry. It needs to be one of those events, and it needs to be planned out. I sit ready to go sit down with you and help you if you decide that you want to commit to multi-housing work. I will sit down with you and help you plan out your first year's events, maybe your first 18 months events, so that you've already got that planned out, so that you can kind of go to a manager later and say, okay, this is what you said to us, this is what we'd like to do. And how will that meet your needs in that process? Launch that ministry. Adult Bible Study, Kids Club, English as a second language. There's lots of ideas in the book. And then exit with care. You just don't want to cut them off. You want to move out so that your indigenous leaders aren't just abruptly left holding the bag there. I thought I hit this. This is what Alabama has done. They've got people working in all of these places building multi-housing strategy. And what we're planning on doing, we're going to do a model of that with our multi-housing strategy. If you were with us at the association, at the executive board meeting, it was a two-pronged approach where I asked specific churches to work with specific communities, but then taking a multi-housing strategist and giving them assignments to go out and start work. Number 1, communicate with management. Then connect with the residents, coach the key leaders, create missional community, and cooperate with the partners that come in with you there. This is what we'll be asking our multi-housing strategists to do. The first quarter, they'll be trained, they'll go in and start some events, and by the end of a year, they will have hopefully have started in 4 different apartment communities or multi-housing communities. There would be 4 missional communities, not one in each one. Now imagine if I have 3 strategies, I may have 2 strategies. Okay, let's just go and say God calls both of these folks to be strategists. Hopefully by the summer of next year, there will be 8 missional communities and 8 additional apartment communities or mobile home communities in our association. That would be that many more people. Let's just say they run 8. Let's just say they run 8 in each one. That's 64 people who were not attending church, who didn't know the Lord, whose now lives are being changed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. And if we, that just kind of tells. Here's some slides. Even these little blue dots down here represent apartment complex that are here. This is the Biloxi area right here. I know that there's more up Highway 15 than what this shows. This is Gulfport, the Orange Grove area. That shows you that area there. This is Long Beach. This is Pass Christian and Bay St. Louis. Let me tell you one real quick thing. We use Mapping Center. I forgot what it was. We use Mapping Center and here, and we're able to pull up names and addresses and phone numbers for a lot of folks that are there. So we had Don Bearden, who's over at Cornerstone Baptist Church there in Pass Christian, came to me and he said, here is this apartment complex right here. We looked at it and he said, I want the names and addresses of those people. And so we pulled those names and addresses. They just sent out flyers. They just mailed them some flyers. They had one couple who showed up. The lady called on Friday. She said, I got your flyers. She said, really interested in this. They showed up on Sunday. They came the next Wednesday night. They came the next Sunday. They began to invite people out of the apartment complex. And he told me the last time that I talked to him, they have reached 4 families in that apartment complex. Off of one flyer. Because they, and so they reached into that. You're interested in that? Let me know. We'll do that. This is the Waveland area. This is the Wiggins area. There's probably more than that are on. This really probably does not show your public housing that's on there. God has opened a great door for us by working through South Mississippi Housing Development folks. They jumped on board with us. I figured when I sent that email that I'd have to go down there and beat on the door to get to talk to them. Sent it on Thursday. I had an answer on Monday, and before I could type her a thank you for answering me, the lady that she said would call me was on the phone and has opened the doors for us and given us the information about managers so that we can go into places like Timber Grove and Baywood and some of those the estates at Juan Cuevas over in D'Iberville, and there are about 7 or 8 of those that we can move into because they have